Welcome. That was an example of the power of Skype. We're going to be showing you some more of that as we go through our presentation. Thanks for joining us this morning. I know you had a long night last night, so I'm glad you made it in this morning. We're excited to be here. My name is Derek Whittle. I'm in the Lync marketing group focused on sales readiness for our sales field, but I've spent the last year and a half in the Skype division as well. And so Barry and I do a lot of these talks with customers about how to use Lync and Skype together. We're going to share that with you today.
I'm Barry Castle. I'm part of the Lync technical marketing team. Prior to joining Lync, I was with Skype for Business for 3 years. And of course, our reinforced strategy around Lync as the appropriate place to deliver business and enterprise solutions meant that it was an obvious choice for me to make the transition over. So we're now both part of the Lync team with history on the Skype side. Because of that, I think the team felt we were the right guys to deliver the Skype and Lync story together. We're going to do that with you. Lots of interesting things to share. That example we'll come back to in a few slides' time. But for now, a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. So you'll come out of here with just about everything you need to know about the business opportunities for Lync Skype Connectivity V2, how it works, so we'll have a look under the hood at some of the underlying technologies. Namely, we'll talk about the common video standard that we're now using between the two systems. We'll talk to you about the move to enterprise-ready security and NAT traversal mechanisms, much more in line with an enterprise security policy and strategy. And then we'll drop down to discuss the Silk codec, which is used for Lync Skype connectivity calls. And that's actually a break from what we were doing with Lync before. Lync was using real-time audio. The key takeaways: video calling, now available. Well, will be available when we release. We're now in dog food. But we'll be sharing you some calls, so we'll show you how we can get those set up together. We've got an extra screen here, so Derek actually sits on this screen waiting for me to call in using Skype. Enterprise security, we'll show you some of the network monitor stuff, and we'll get to the best of breed audio quality with Silk.
Yeah, so our agenda is we're going to talk about some of the other areas where you're going to see Skype being integrated into the Microsoft family of products. We'll spend some time positioning the two products, show you some differentiators between Lync and Skype. We'll go to the business cases, as Barry alluded to. Under the covers, the enabling technologies. And without further ado, let's get started.
All right, so Skype is an application, freely downloadable from our websites, and is available on a range of platforms. We tend to follow the crowd. So if the crowd moves to a platform, we know we've got to get there as well. That's actually got us on some strange systems. You know, it isn't just Xbox, for example. There are other gaming platforms that you'll find Skype available on. You'll find it on your TVs. We really partner as much as we can with those platforms that the crowd seems to want to go after. And we'll continue to do that. It's fundamental to our business model. That drives the 300 million average monthly connected users. We used to count a much larger number, which was people who had created Skype accounts, but we just felt that that wasn't really being fair. So some people will go ahead and go, okay, I have so many accounts right now in the marketplace. Yeah, we count people who actually log in. And that's, I think, an important thing to underline here. But this continues to be, you know, it's a dynamic number. It continues to grow. And I think what is telling, when I joined the company back in 2010, that's Skype rather than Microsoft, the global international calling minutes number that you see there was sitting down at 12%. Now, knowing that this company was created in 2003, that's an incredible growth, just getting to the 12%. The fact that now we're carrying 38% of global international calling minutes is almost astounding. And I think one of the key things that drives that is a really great audio quality. We couldn't do some of the things we do unless we had solid audio quality, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. The other thing is video became more or less the thing that everyone identified Skype with. So as you see, it's about 45% of the calls that are made over Skype use video. And that's one of the key drivers for this announcement that we're now making. Knowing that the installed base of Skype is video enabled, the demographics look very interesting for business and enterprise. These are people who are internet savvy, they're used to e-commerce type business models, and being able to tee up that video enabled real-time communicating community to businesses and enterprise is kind of the underlying momentum, motivation for us to deliver Lync Skype Connectivity V2. Bringing these two together effectively establishes the reach that Lync customers are sort of interested in right now. We spend a lot of time, Derek and I, talking about these business models with customers. So we know there's real interest in this particular business model, particularly financial services and healthcare. We'll come back to that. Those numbers, by the way, specifically the number about the international calling, that's telegeography. They publish every January, looking back on the preceding year. So that number I just shared with you is the most recent.
But let's talk a little bit now about some of the places where you've seen Skype be integrated into the Microsoft family. We mentioned the Lync Skype Connectivity version 1 was shipped in this last May. That has audio, contacts, and instant messaging. If you want real-time video, audio, instant messaging from the web browser, it's here today in Outlook.com. We support WebRTC, the goals of it, but that's still the dream. If you want the actual thing working today, go to Outlook.com and give it a try. We have Skype for the BlackBerry. As Barry mentioned, Skype is on just about virtually every type of device. And one of the cool things that's available now is instead of just leaving a standard voice message when you can't reach the other party, you can shoot a short video and leave that, a video message, or a VIM as we call them, very popular as well. Skype's on the Xbox, and it's also really helped drive the Office 365 Home Premium SKU because every month that a user keeps that subscription active, they get 60 minutes of Skype calling. And then finally, we're going to talk about version 2 of Lync Skype Connectivity as well.
All right, excellent. So that's sort of where we got to so far. It continues to grow. There are things where we know are coming through the pipeline. But I now wanted to change gears somewhat. Those of you that arrived probably on time, let's be fair, I spent the last 12 minutes playing a video of a TED choir. This was done at the TED conference. And effectively, the conductor brought together the people on stage with 30 or so people who were dialed in using Skype. And they all participated in the choir in real time. Now, I think the point here is that we do a lot of work to make sure that audio quality is good, that the delay is kept to a minimum. And that's really the underlying, I think, key value prop that we're delivering today. You'll find a lot of over-the-top applications that will deliver real time. But Skype's sort of proud of what we've done with the Silk codec. It's a company we acquired. They were specialized in codec development. And we've done lots of sort of head-to-head comparisons between different codecs that are available at the sort of wideband or super wideband level in the marketplace today. And we're pretty sure that this codec performs the best in a non-quality of service network, typically the internet, mobile networks, etc. So Lync Skype Connectivity is using the Silk codec rather than real-time audio. We absolutely know the performance of both of those codecs. You can imagine it's the same team now working on both. We know that for non-quality of service networks, Silk is just a really good performer, and we do that with forward error correction. But I wanted to underline that before we get back into the details of that in a few minutes, because it's one of the things that makes us really valuable to the broadcasting industry. Now, as you know, one of our competitors spends a lot of money placing their telephone handset in TV programs, going from programs about hospitals to programs about police searching for folks, all sorts. You know, we've all seen those phones. And the thing that resonates for me is that young folks, when I talk to my kids, I can't remember at any time in their life where we had a telephone in our house. And I'm not sure if you're the same, but a desk phone is actually a new thing for someone who starts out after finishing college. They're just not seeing that in their day-to-day lives very much. We spend quite a lot of time reaching out to the new generation of folks, the people who are coming up, starting out their lives. And you know, as they get to those teen years, it's really important that we gather them up, at least that they have that brand recognition and that they know that they can use Skype if they want to phone home from college, for example. We do a lot of work in that respect. What I'm going to share with you in a sec is a programming piece that we've done with product placement. We're really targeting a different audience, I think. And I wanted to share that with you because I think the net effect over time is that we'll continue to reach out to the audiences that come on stream as consumers. So for the net result for businesses is that they're getting a demographic upgrade as kind of a constant feed of pipeline new customers. And we will continue to do product placement. You may know that Skype's widely used in the news industry, but that isn't really touching the right buttons. We have certain hairstyles in this room. This is not the hairstyle that you will see with the people I'm about to show you. These are the people who will be coming on next. Number 5. Yes.
Last week we did it with NBA players. Tonight we're going to play with a singing group, and that singing group is One Direction. Join us now from our dressing rooms in Nashville, Tennessee. We will begin with Team HLZ, Harry, Liam, and Zane. Hey, fellas, how you doing? You look comfortable in Nashville. Do you like Nashville?
We like Nashville. It's nice.
How familiar are you with the items in your dressing room? All right, so this might not be the easiest, but your opponents tonight are the other members of your band, joining us now from their dressing room, located very close to yours, Team NL, Niall and Louie. There they are, Niall and Louie. There are only 2 of you against 3. Do you consider this a disadvantage?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
So you don't need to add a tambourine player to the band or something to help you out? Okay, very good. Gentlemen, shake virtual hands. It is time to play a special One Direction edition of the Skype Scavenger Hunt. This is a simple game. I'll ask you to find an item or complete a task. Your job is to get it or do it as quickly as you can. Are you ready? All right, let's begin. Your first challenge is run to the bathroom, make a toothpaste mustache of yourself, and bonus points for goatee or beard or any other facial hair you want to add, okay? All right, and there they go. You want to add chest hair? Oh, wow, that was really fast. We're going to have to give this one to Niall and Louie. Very well done, very quickly done.
The next step is we're going to pass on that. They asked them to go back and return with their underwear over their pants.
Yes,
You can watch it on your own, but that gives you an example of some of the fun things we're doing to kind of drive the brand and make it popular across the generations.
So we've done a lot of work with schools. You may be aware that we're on the Ellen Show, often reaching out for a project called Skype for the Classroom. The ability of Skype to bring people together has become somewhat of a phenomenon, and our experience is that these broadcasting efforts are critically important for us to get our brand out there and continue to reach to new groups of users. The thing is, what the broadcasting industry requires is post-production editing. They require watermarking under people's names. The kind of logo stuff that you saw in that image that we just did there is actually real time. We have a solution that actually blends all of these capabilities into production software packages along with gateway capabilities into their existing broadcasting hardware. There are a lot of business models that some organizations will now want to investigate for themselves, events, marketing activities, etc. So you'll see more from us in that space. Typically an advertising business model from Skype right now is the sort of thing that you would have seen in the keynote. And that is where we basically provide you an on-net call outside of an 800 relationship. So if someone comes to your website after doing a search in a Bing or somewhere else, and you've got the Skype add-on plugin in your browser, then if you click that, that's going to be a free call for you, whether that's a normal paid number or not. We'll take that over the net. And that's part of our advertising business model, but you can see how the broadcasting thing I just shared is actually also something of key interest. You know, we talked to some of the cruise line tourism type companies. They're particularly interested in the sort of live programming that they can start to put together. Really what I'm trying to say to you is there's a lot of activity around Skype that feeds in. It feeds in interest, it feeds in users into a business model that takes advantage of that growing Skype community. One of which we don't talk about very much is actually the Wi-Fi thing that I'm showing at the bottom there. Skype has a hotspot finder. Many of you will use Wi-Fi services when you're on the road. One of the things we've noticed is, given that we go after consumers in the Skype side, the consumer that travels isn't particularly interested in signing up for an ad hoc Wi-Fi service in a country that they're simply visiting one time, particularly in a cruise environment where they go maybe 3-4 countries in a cruise. They don't want to have to establish credit card transactions along the way. They can use their Skype credit and the hotspot finder basically wherever they land in the world. We don't own any Wi-Fi base stations. Those are all done through federated partners. Those federated partners basically offer up the access points to our credit transactions. So effectively, you can now land in a country, find the hotspots that you need, and then make your Skype call. So, it's just a service. We don't promote it perhaps as much as we should, but it all goes together to making Skype something that people find particularly friendly. Around the holiday periods, you'll see Skype gets used very intensely. Mother's Day, those kinds of events. So it is becoming really, and I got to watch out here because I'm going to say that Skype's becoming something that's almost a grammatical verb. We're not supposed to do that, so I'm going to stay away from it. But can you get in touch with me has now become, can you, and then our brand name. But it is our brand name, and we can't use it as a verb. There you go. All right, so we heard that the theme here at this event is all about come together. The whole Skype thing is about extending the reach of Lync. So what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about how enterprises typically talk to Derek and myself about where they're going to use Skype.
But first, a little bit kind of tying together what we were talking about is that, one more click. We spend a lot of time building the Skype side of this continuum, making sure the brand is viable and growing and more connected users. And you all know how the work we're doing on the Lync side. Then Lync Skype connectivity is the tool that's going to bring those two audiences together to provide universal communications. And I'm really excited about that new terminology, really enabling any person to reach anyone, anywhere, on any device, in any way they want to. And we're uniquely positioned to make that happen. And we're going to show you more about that as we go forward.
Yeah, so one of the questions that I have to handle here is, hey, look, we've got Lync Online. If I buy that outside of an Office 365 plan, it costs me $5.50. You've also got the Skype Premium thing that costs me $4.99. Can you just explain the difference between the two of these programs? Because as a business, maybe it's more beneficial to me, for me to sit over on the Skype side. So I just need to underline some of the things that you get over on the Lync side that you're going to want. Your meeting controls, the ability to have up to 250 people in a meeting, the ability to control who can speak, the ability to control policies for each of the users based on Active Directory groups, and the ability to roll out the account names using Active Directory. All of that's impossible with Skype. So Skype does have a management or a provisioning tool called Skype Manager. It's simply a website, and it allows you to use your credit card to assign credit to multiple users at once. Those users can be created all from within Skype Manager, but I have to say, once you get over 100 users, it's virtually unmanageable. So what most of the larger organizations that that dabble with Skype, I would say. And the reason they have been doing that is because we didn't have Lync Skype connectivity, and particularly V2. So those are the organizations that did that. Actually would typically have each of their employees file their own expenses, not manage it from a central perspective, simply because after 100 users it becomes unmanageable. On the upside for the Skype premium offer, though, I would say is PSTN connectivity. I think everyone here knows that Lync Online or Office 365 doesn't natively have PSTN connectivity. But what I will say is that for organizations that are interested in that, you can purchase that connectivity through a partner. So there are partner offers out there that will work in conjunction with Lync Online or Office 365. So you can get there. And in fact, I had the TCO analysis that was carried out by Marty Parker and Brent Kelly on the first day of this conference on Tuesday. So if you look up TCO, you'll find that they shared the economics of Lync on-prem versus or in conjunction with Lync Online, purchased in conjunction with a minutes plan from a third-party partner. They did that comparison. So if you want to understand the dynamics and the economics of that, by all means, just have a look through that TCO. But do expect us to publish a white paper that kind of nets out the value prop here for Lync Online. So we just wanted to share that with you so that you could understand how these things are different. Fundamentally, though, there are some differences right there in the product that mean that most enterprises will pass on using Skype for their corporate meetings, and we'll explain that. So when I set up a meeting with Skype, it's active for me, the meeting organizer. I'm the person who starts the meeting, okay? So to do that, I'll set up a group, and I'll drag some other users into that group. I may even save the group, give it a good name. So when I was working on that TCO project, I created a group called TCO. That then can be saved, so I can save it and have it there permanently. Now I've got a record, kind of a P-chat capability that you would typically have over on the Lync side. And when I'm ready to call the team for a meeting, I simply go ahead and press call group. Skype will then use its call forwarding rules to either do simultaneous ring on multiple devices or do a follow me, find me type feature. But effectively, in the end, someone's going to get some dial tone. If they choose to join my meeting, we're all good, we can start. But most of the time, of course, they were just doing something else when it started to ring. And now I, the meeting organizer, have got to ring them back and try and get them onto the call. So it all takes time. Most meetings start about 10 minutes late. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show you what you already know, but we're going to contrast how that works under Lync.
Yeah, we'll quickly just remind you that what you get with Lync is free busy information because we're integrated with Office. So a calendar invitation with one click becomes a Lync meeting. You click.
Yep, coming up.
And so you get a conference ID, you get dial-in numbers, and you get a real modern meeting experience. And that's a pretty big difference between the two. And then you can add the Lync room system on top of that, where you have Lync running on a large screen device like that over there. So you get a full spectrum of meeting choices with the Lync solution.
I've already talked about this, but effectively the admin center is where you manage Lync Online. It is Active Directory enabled, so you can integrate it fully into your existing policies. That's not the case with Skype Manager.
So we mentioned version 1 of Lync Skype connectivity. We'll just do a quick reminder of what that was. Let me build this out. It was where we introduced the Microsoft account to the Skype user, and that was really a linchpin for this first version. We started this about November of 2012, and we've seen a great growth in that usage amongst Skype users. But in order to make this Lync Skype connectivity work, you do have to be signed in with a Microsoft account. And the other thing to remind folks about, for this first version, we didn't have any mobile clients that supported this capability, and we don't have video or group sessions. The mobile clients will be addressed in version 2 as we go to that slide. Oh.
Yeah, so one thing that we keep forgetting this, I think it's to build. We should build this earlier.
Yes.
Basically, we wanted to underline that even with this very first version, some of our contact center partners had already integrated Lync Skype Connectivity V1 into their contact center offerings. They're using a mixture of UCWA, UCMA to integrate and therefore get all of the usual call center features, you know, so skills-based routing, IVRs, reporting, agent productivity reports, time of day routing, etc. So they're leveraging all of their capabilities sitting on top of Lync, and effectively they've been able to enable Lync Skype connectivity calls to come inbound to a contact center. We're going to show you in a few minutes what I mean by the other little box up next to the Internet Cloud, which is the website button. I'll show you that. I'll give you an example of that in a few minutes. Okay, so on to Lync Skype Connectivity V2. The headline news, obviously, is that we're now adding video to this scenario, which is represented by the purpley line next to the one we had before. We're using H.264 SVC. That's a codec that was used in Lync for quite some time. So effectively, we now have a common video codec between both systems. We're leveraging some of the capabilities of that codec, which I'll get on to in a few minutes to explain the design decisions here. And then it's using TLS, secure RTP, obviously, but also stun, turn, and ice for NAT traversal. We weren't doing that before with Skype, so effectively now an inbound Skype call or an outbound call from Lync to Skype uses the same mechanisms that you use when you do link federation between two Lync accounts. So if you're federating between multiple Lync instances around the internet, then it's exactly the same mechanism, stun, turn, and ice for NAT traversal. All right, and those of you that are taking pictures, I'm just going to point out that these pictures are available to you. We're recording the entire session, so you get them, if that doesn't come out well. Or you've got our heads sticking over the top. All right. Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to ask you to come to the mic. I hate to do that, but we're recording the session, so those that want to review it.
Curious about stun and ice and whatnot, because Skype for years did that in its own magical way. Is it replacing or just adding on to it to do Lync specific?
Okay, so I'm going to call, I've got a slide on that later.
Yes, we'll come back to that.
So I'm going to call a safety on that question and come back to it. The Lync Skype Connectivity V2 capability is also offered in the cloud. Fundamentally, the difference here is there are a few less steps to get things set up. It's not too onerous, and most of you will already have played around with this. Can I just have a show of hands? Who implemented V1?
Good.
We're not going to call that a majority in the room. But I'll take you through all of the steps that you need to go through to get that activated. So those of you for whom it is still a mystery, it won't be after our session. All right. On to Derek.
So I mentioned the client support in a couple slides ago. We have basically 15 clients that we need to move to support this capability. And we're going to get them done hopefully by the end of this calendar year. Right now, the top two, so the Skype for Windows desktop client and the Skype for Mac, as well as the middle one, the Lync 2013 from CU4, those are the two you'll see us using. We're not going to use the Mac one today, but those are the two you'll see us using the demo. They're the furthest along, but the rest of those will come along as well. It's a big job. I just wanted to give you a sense for the scale of it, because there's a lot of clients we've got to move forward to get this capability done.
All right, so it's time. Okay, so we've got to work out which screen we're going to be on. We're going to do this from screen 5, which is my machine here, and I'm the Skype user. And Derek is going to be, it's a little weird because he's standing to my left, but he's actually going to display over here on my right, your left. Okay, so this is Derek, he's on Lync. Here we go, fingers crossed. All right, so call setup can be a little bit delayed, and I apologize for being bright red. I hope that I'm not actually bright red. Please tell me. All right, looks like we have a call.
We are in business.
Okay, so what we've done here is effectively we've popped through firewalls using stun, turn, and ice. We have Silk used as the codec between both systems. So that's unlike anything we've ever done before with Lync. And finally, we're using 264 SVC as the video codec. The call is alive and well and kicking. All right, good. Demo done?
No reason to applaud, but because you've probably seen it a couple times, but we're pretty excited about bringing this capability to this connection.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we're going to move back to screen one, I think,
Yep.
at this point. Sorry, we have so many screens
We had a
on
picture
our...
in case it didn't work, so we're prepared.
So we're juggling quite a few screens here, so that's where you're getting the uncomfortable switch screen commands from me. So we're going to talk a little bit about the business opportunities now. So we've got 4 of them that we're going to show you. First one we're going to touch on is B2C. What we're showing you here is sort of the state of the art. This is where we all live right now when we're doing lead generation or when we're doing inbound customer support calls. 800 numbers. I know of a leading game console manufacturer that takes a very, very large number of support calls from its installed base of consumers. I happen to know what the number is relating to those calls for 800 calls, and it's quite a big number, but I can't share it with you. But I imagine you all have 800 numbers yourselves. You understand the economics of how those numbers operate. Non-geographic numbers are charged still by the minute, which is actually quite surprising where we've got to. You can always find better deals, but for most of you, this will be sort of in the tens, but probably even more millions of dollars per year. Anything we can do to help you address and target those costs is going to be helpful, I think. And we believe that this model, the ability for people to do on-net calling between a consumer and the businesses that they want to interact with, is actually going to change the game significantly. It's a new economic model. But of course, more importantly, we're adding the dimension of video to that relationship. Most customers are a little uncomfortable showing themselves, but I have to say on the financial services side, they look at it as a way to establish a relationship with their customers. Same thing in healthcare. So it won't necessarily be the customer that has to go on video, but certainly there is a lot of interest by these organizations to establish more relationship richness with their customers. I have to say we probably sit on a financial services company call about once every 2 weeks. Would that be about right? So web chat, it's now, it's out there to the extent that everyone is now doing it. You saw a demo from Gurdeep where he showed 2 different scenarios. I'm not sure which one people have remembered. You would certainly have seen the Lync Skype Connectivity V2 call. That's where he called the porn star guy with the guitars. The other call was the one where he did a call because he was suffering from a pain in his hand, the doctor call. That one used what he called J-Link or UC-JAR. It's an API enhancement that allows you to put multimedia into an iframe within your website. So I just want to contrast with that because it's far more likely that you're going to do anonymous inbound calling using, whoops, wrong button. So using Lync Skype connectivity is probably going to be best of breed video, and you're probably going to use that in conjunction with the other mechanism. The reason I'm saying that is because the other one is closer to WebRTC. It's basically an iframe-based application developer tool that allows you to roll out anonymous services to people you don't necessarily know, or in fact people who are just coming in for a quick interaction. Those sorts of interactions will be in the browser. We believe that more work is done to get to the level of quality that we're able to deliver with Silk. And so you'll probably want to mix and match. I mean, quality is pretty key in a contact center type environment. So I'm just going to contrast these. The one on your left, which is the Lync Skype connectivity call, could potentially use one of our URIs or our Skype buttons to make the call. It could also use the in-browser advertising capability that Gurdeep also explained to you. In both cases, the user, your customer, would be using the Skype client. They will get improved audio and video capability when they do that, although those demos looked really good on the keynote. Our experience is that Silk is the way to go for that kind of call. The one over on your right is the web software developers kit, so it's an SDK. He called it J-Lync. On this diagram, it's shown as UC-jar, and it effectively allows you to embed Lync capability within your browser, so you can actually, within your website. Now customers can actually chat with you or interact, both video and voice, directly in their web browser. So I just wanted to separate those two out so you understand that as you start working with us on your business models in these areas, that you need to get both sides of this story as you're building this stuff out. We fully expect that organizations will retain the Skype ID or the Microsoft account that's associated with their customers' Skype accounts. We fully expect those to be stored in your CRM systems, and that when the financial service organization wants to interact with the customer, they will simply generate the call directly from the CRM system, and that they'll be using Skype to do that. Why? Because they'll get a better call at this moment in time. That inbound call is more than likely initially for anonymous call-ins or just general calling to a support service, etc. It's more likely to use the one on the right, and that would be embedded within your website and also branded by you. All right.
So now a couple of examples around, Barry talked about business to consumer. On the business to business front, we're working with a large temporary staffing agency, and they have offices, hundreds of offices, and each of those persons has a virtual Rolodex, because when they get a job to fill, they want to quickly identify who they have available and quickly contact them to get them into the interview. So they would like to use Lync Skype connectivity in that scenario so that their corporate folks can use Lync, and that Rolodex can be all Skype users. It cuts their costs down dramatically, but they also get an immersive video relationship, a relationship with video that makes it a much more immersive relationship. So they really want to see that. They're really looking forward to using this service for that. Another example might be, let's say you were working on a project and you bring on a contractor, and instead of having to provision them with a Lync account in your environment, you could just have them use Skype and connect using Lync Skype connectivity and make that relationship work.
All right, so another aspect of this is that your employees are now able to interact directly with multimedia with their families. Excellent approach to employee retention, better lifestyle balance. I've got a video on this, and we're going to show that, I think, in a couple of seconds.
Lync knows there's a world out there. A world of customers, suppliers, business partners, and people that you're a little closer to. And moments you just can't miss. Lync.
Very good. So the message is clear that both for your interactions with your customers, your suppliers, Skype's ideal, and you're simply adding people to your contact list. Some of them are internal, but when they're Skype, they're actually marked as external Skype. So you can see who you're dealing with outside. They're in your contact list. You can interact with them day to day. You can even establish policies on the ways in which your organization is allowed to interact with external users like this. The video at the end, of course, is that kind of added capability. We're proud of it. And in fact, for people who are on the road a lot, I hope that's not too much the case for you guys, but if, like us, you end up in airplanes or trains, planes, and automobiles, I think is the expression, then you know what I'm talking about. It's important to keep in touch with the people who are most important in your lives. My interview at Skype was actually fully on video. I never met the people who interviewed me. And we hear a lot from HR departments that that's sort of the trend, is that they want to do the initial screening at least using video. And Skype is the brand that they typically go after for this sort of thing. So it's certainly something that will continue.
Now, you could use the Lync web app to do this, but the advantage of using Skype in this scenario is that the ad hoc and the communication can go back both directions. So that person that you're interviewing can call you back, you can do some follow-up. So that's just another way to use to contrast the two opportunities.
All right, so I promised that I was going to talk a little bit about the Skype URIs. What I'm showing you on this slide is basically the documentation on how you get this stuff up and running and where you need to look. So over on your far left, you'll see that I've given you the website for the developer site. You can download the documentation from there. You can customize this, so you can put your own brand in. You can pre-select the modality that's going to be used. I've given you some sample code. The important thing to retain here on this slide is the number 2. The number 2 means that it's going to use the link name that it's going to be calling. So in this case, I'm going to be calling contoso.com, and the particular user I'll be calling will be Mr. Fu. That's important because if you were to leave that either empty or have it as 1, it would be calling another Skype user. So it's important that you retain that number 2 there. Okay? Prerequisites must be an MSA. In order to use this capability, the contact relationship must already have been established. So you've already sent an invite to Mr. Fu or Mrs. Fu over in Contoso. All right, so I'll take you through quickly what I'm going to show you in demo. So I'm going to go to this dummy website that I built here. I'm going to go ahead and click that button. Bam. It's going to ask me some questions, make sure that the customer is okay to make this call, and then we're into the call. All right. At this time, this is audio only because it's actually using the V1 technology. So we expect this to be enhanced over time. So I like control on my screen. There we go. And so this is my website, and I'm going to pop over here, and I'm going to make a call to myself. Means we don't have to juggle the screens again. All right, here we go. Ask me the questions. All right, this is me on Skype calling me on Lync. Schizophrenic, but there you go. Oh, I see what's happened. I'm actually in a meeting right now.
That's right. Checking your availability.
There we go. Okay, so second time I've made that mistake. Sorry, guys. Perfect. All right, we're going to have another go. So I can get rid of some of those prompts as they come up, but I just wanted you to see each of the steps so that you knew. Oh, here it is. And I'm turning volume off because obviously we would then be echoing, but I'm now in an audio-only call that I generated directly from my website. Okay. Now those URIs, as you look at the documentation on there, what you'll find is that we cover inserting these buttons onto websites, in email campaigns, as well as mobile applications, and obviously Windows applications. So it's all covered there, and I've given you the website address, so you can go and check that out for yourselves. All right, so that was that demo done. We're going to have a quick look at the underlying technologies. Hands up who's still awake. Just checking, it's early morning. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Who's not awake?
Vote of confidence. So our implementation of H.264 SVC is using the temporal scalability capability. So I know that there are 3 other elements to that standard. The temporal one is where you encode once, and you send out slightly more information than you would have sent out if you were doing AVC, for example, but you've pre-encoded all of the temporal slots. So the receiver on the other end can pick and choose whether they take every frame that you send, every other frame, or every third or fourth frame. You know, this particular codec functions fine up to 20 or 40% of packet loss. So on the receiving application side, you've got a lot of options and still getting a good video quality coming into you. So it's able to handle mobile environments pretty well. It saves battery life, it saves processing power in order to be able to reproduce a moving image. That approach has, you know, we've been using that for a while on the Lync side, but it's critically important for being able to do mobile type video conferencing. So we've standardized on that. That's kind of how it works under the hood. You see there I'm also listing H.265. That's where we get into 3D video conferencing. Probably something in our future for now, right? But the industry's already hard at work rolling that one out. This is a kind of a nod to the only way that you could kind of control Skype on your network. If you went into the Skype options menu, you would find the ability to predefine the port number that would be used for the Skype calls. If you do that, you can also associate a SOX5 proxy, insert that into your DMZ. Once you've done that, you could then prioritize on your, I put the Cisco router commands in here, you could prioritize the port that arrives on your Cisco router and effectively squash or in fact entirely inhibit Skype on your network. That can be set using a group policy object registry setting type approach, but I don't think it's particularly scalable. And I'd have to say most of the organizations we've talked to have gone, yeah, but I have 1,000 sites around the world. You're telling me I'd have to put SOX5 proxies all over the world. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to contrast that with our approach to NAT traversal, but I think it's probably the point at which to make a nod to the gentleman in the dark blue or black shirt, can't quite see, who asked the question about our approach versus our approach. So the Skype approach, as you know, as an over-the-top application, it was pretty critical that we not get hampered as we traverse different network boundaries. And to put that into perspective, as an over-the-top application doing global video calls between individuals, you're obviously going through different carrier networks, and it's important that ultimately, if that call is going to be even vaguely good or even work, that traditionally we needed to find a way to make that work through NATed firewalls. And the approach that was taken initially, I'm not sure was particularly popular. There was a lot of port hopping involved. And there was also some polymorphic coding that got involved. But I have to say, your statement earlier on that we were not using stun, turn, and ice isn't strictly true. Actually, the Skype protocol was based on stun. That doesn't necessarily mean that when it was seen circulating across an intrusion detection system that it would not trigger alerts. And I think that was one of the most annoying things for large enterprises, that they would see Skype traffic come in looking just like other, I'm not going to call it malware, but other unsanctioned software packages or applications that were running on the corporate network. And you know, if a large number of users were using Skype, that alert frequency was just too much to manage. It was annoying. So we recognized that, and with Lync Skype Connectivity v2, we've addressed it. Effectively, what we've done is we've deployed stun, turn, and ice. The edge server in this diagram is obviously your Lync edge server, sits in your DMZ. You're already using those, especially if you're doing federation. I'm going to build this a little further if you're taking pictures. So what I'm doing here is that first red line that we drew there, that's if we don't have NAT issues in the call. So most of the time, you only get the red line if you're on the same network. All right. So if you're doing a link-to-link call and everyone's on the corporate network, then you won't be using stun and turn. You will just make that call direct. On the other hand, for most of us, when we go outside of the organization, addresses get changed as you go through the NATed firewall, and that makes it really hard for the SIP invite message to make its way through. So what happens here is we make use of the edge server, and we allow the edge server to act as a proxy to help set this call up. Once the call is established, though, we're good to go. So the edge server in this example is no longer in the call flow. The media is going direct peer-to-peer. We've just used the edge server to set the call up. That is the mechanism called stun. I'm now going to show you turn. In the turn environment, we failed with stun, and so we backpedaled to use turn. Turn actually sends both the signaling and the media through the edge server, the edge server acting as a proxy, both for the signaling and the media. There you go. So, as I said, we've implemented the Lync capability into the Skype client now. Skype client is now completely aligned with what we're doing over on the Lync side. We think that this is going to be particularly popular with those of you that are focused in on that security issue, the one that was raised by that gentleman just now. Hopefully you agree. Anyway, we're amateurs at this. We don't really know what we're doing, but Derek and I put a network monitor trace on our calls as we were doing our preparation for this event. And here what you're seeing is actually the stun and turn interchange as we got this call set up. So we're pretty sure that what we said is just true. This is the proof. But you guys know a lot more about this stuff than we do. But we just thought we'd share it with you. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to play you. We've moved on from security, and we're going to talk about quality. And I just wanted to share the difference between a G729 call, a codec, in fact, and I think we can stay on your screen. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and click this. And
okay.
If he was on my screen, you would see that I like Tony Bennett.
Also the December tour in Yorkshire.
All right, say that again.
To administer medicine to animals is frequently a very difficult matter.
In the course of a December tour in Yorkshire.
All right, we've got a little bit of feedback there.
Medicine to animals is frequently a very difficult matter.
In the course of a December tour in Yorkshire.
All right, now I'm going to play the Silk one. This is a super wideband
To
codec.
administer medicine to animals is frequently a very difficult matter.
In the course of a December tour in Yorkshire.
All right, Yorkshire is a county in northern England, just letting you know. Okay, so what's happening there is, because we're using a super wideband codec, we're able to pick up the sibilance at the top of the frequency range. I'm seeing nods in the room, so you guys already know this, but by picking up more of the frequency of the spoken word, we're moving beyond a codec that was actually developed probably 50 years ago that has served its purpose. It's done well. 720, 711, 729, we've all been using it for all of our phone calls, but it's only when you hear the difference that you realize how fundamentally we've moved on. That codec that I played on the second one, the Silk codec, that's used for Skype calls. And that's one of the reasons why we're pretty sure we're on the right track of using this Silk codec for these Lync Skype connectivity calls. Our analysis shows, remember we're doing 38% of global international calling minutes. Over time, we've tested different codecs with that community. So, for reasons of simply knowing that we're on the right track, sometimes we would play a wideband codec, sometimes a super wideband codec, or sometimes we drop it down to the equivalent of 729, just to see what people's reaction was during the call. And what we now know statistically is that as you move up through the better codecs, the call duration lasts longer. In other words, people enjoy and get more out of a call when they get better quality voice. It seems so obvious, right? I mean, I shouldn't even be belaboring the point. But I just wanted to make sure you understood that we haven't taken lightly this move to using Silk within Lync for these Lync Skype connectivity calls. Where we don't manage the quality of service, we're trying to use the best possible codec. And the fact that Silk incorporates some forward error checking capabilities that we can leverage in a lossy type network mean that 9 times out of 10 you get a great call even when the network is choppy. That's important to say because for business, if you're taking an inbound customer call, they won't care that the problem is their end. And their end may well be part of that important call they're making to you. You may have the best network in the world. We have to make it work over, the broadest possible range of poor network environments. All right, there we go. So that's it for the Silk codec, why we did it.
Now we'll go into some deployment details.
There you go.
And you take that one. Go ahead.
Okay, so Skype privacy comes up now and again on these calls. I'm just letting you know that Skype uses AES 256 encryption. For these Lync Skype connectivity calls, we're actually moving to the Lync standard, which was AES 128. But I'm going to focus in on the Skype part of it because over the years you will find that there'll be articles that say Skype can be hacked, I can listen into stuff. That's actually not true. Skype calls go peer-to-peer. There is no central place where you could put a wiretap on a call. We use AES 256 for both the signaling and the media. And to my knowledge, there has been no example of that having been hacked. There are cases where Skype's been used as a vehicle to exchange malware, and typically that is when someone puts a virus-type file into a Skype file transfer. If they do that, and the person on the other end hasn't got malware protection, clicks that file, opens it up, it's an executable, it'll do its thing. Skype's simply like email in this respect. If you don't have the appropriate protection on the receiving side, then, well, it's a crapshoot, as they say, I think, here in Vegas. So, buyer beware. You must protect user behavior if they're doing this sort of thing. And in many cases, what organizations will do is they'll change the registry setting for the Skype implementation within their organization so it just can't do file transfer. They'll switch it off, and we have a registry setting that you can use to do that. There's more detail in our IT admin guide, but I think the first port of call, if you want to understand Skype security, is to go to the URL that I'm showing here, and that's got a third-party security audit of Skype. It's still viable. It's somewhat dated. I think it was 2007 when it was put together, but nothing's changed in the core technologies used within Skype, so well worth downloading that document. You actually get a lot of the sort of stuff that gentleman asked me a question about earlier on. So you get a lot more detail on how Skype works than I'm sharing with you today. The other thing I'll mention on this slide is history. Some people ask us about how long we retain history because they're either a regulated organization. Well, if you're using Skype on the consumer side, you can keep the history as long as you want, obviously. But we have options. You can switch history off. And this is chat history, by the way. You can have it 2 weeks, you can have it a month, etc. There are various options that you've got there. I personally keep it forever because I do a lot of chat with people for business. I like to remember what we've said to each other. But in a regulated environment, if your users are using Skype, you may want to switch that off. I don't know. On the Lync side, of course, that is completely controllable. In a regulatory environment, you've obviously got full archiving of chats if you so choose. And in fact, we've got a bunch of recording partners who I'll come on to in a second who've built recording capabilities that you'll see are now appropriate for Lync Skype Connectivity v2. So we'll get on to that in a second.
So now we'll just talk about a couple more sort of things to be aware of as you roll out Lync Skype Connectivity. One is there's a couple of common things that will cause the Lync user not to receive an invite from a Skype user. And it's that button about 2/3 of the way down where it says, under contacts not using Lync, you have to have allow invites but block other communications or the one below it for this to work. If you have it set to block all, then you won't get the invite, and that's a pretty common scenario. The other thing is that the Lync user will see that new request in the new tab, and believe it or not, a lot of folks don't know to look there. So a couple of things when you're troubleshooting as you're rolling out, those are a couple things to look at. Now, we talked about Microsoft accounts. And this is a look at sort of the old flow of how it used to work. This is going to continue to evolve because we really want to make it clear to the user that we want them to sign in with a Microsoft account and to go ahead and merge their Skype ID with that Microsoft account. So we've seen a great number of folks. We're in the tens of millions of users of those connected users are using Microsoft accounts. We continue to see this grow. We'll evolve this experience, and particularly on the mobile platform, There's a lot of work to be done to make that a much more seamless and a smooth experience, and we're working hard on that as well. Now, a couple things about the adding contact scenarios that are worth noting. Here we are, we're going to add a Lync contact to Skype. Of course, I'm logged in with my Microsoft account. Now, what's going on here is we're choosing the user's name, and we're actually not checking on the user name. We're actually just checking on that domain. Remember, we noted there's about 10,000 domains that have signed up for this service. So today, we don't go and check the actual user's name. We just check the domain name. What that means is that precision is important. You have to be sure to remind your users to be very specific about the names they type in, or the experience won't be a good one. Let's put it that way. On the adding contacts on the Lync side, how many of you are on Lync 2013? Most of you? Good. This is the experience you get, and you'll notice that it anticipates you wanting to add a contact that's not in your organization, and it gives you some selections to choose from. What's worth noting here is for Lync 2010, the experience is not like this, and it requires you to do a little bit of gymnastics if you're using an MSA that doesn't have one of the Microsoft-owned domains, so it's not MSN or Outlook.com. And we can give you more details on that if you like afterwards, but be aware that the experience is different for Lync 2010 than it is for Lync 2013. And the last one I'll just talk to you about is around the area of presence. This is more just an observation. You'll notice that on the Skype, there's a number of interesting presence options. One is called invisible. I'd love to be made invisible right about now. No, just kidding. But you notice that there's got to be some mapping that's going on between the Skype presence modes and the Lync presence modes, and that will improve over time. Today, I'm just noting that in addition to that, Lync gets its presence states from multiple places, unlike Skype. So we're going to be working with the teams over the next few months to really work on these, the add contact scenarios and the presence issues to really make the service really shine when it ships.
All right, so we are actually down to, can I just do a quick check? 10:15 is where we pull up.
Right, yeah.
And so I'm going to hammer through the configuration, but believe me, these screens follow the next button in the way I'm going to do now, and you're setting this up. Can I just have a show of hands? How many in the room have already set up Messenger Federation using PIC? So actually, if you've already done that, you're good. You're already set up to use Skype. There are 3 stages to getting this configured. First one is you need to declare your domain using the PIC mechanism. Second one is you need to establish your encryption certificate onto your Edge server. Third step, it's time to roll out the policies that you're going to apply to all of your users. I'm going to go through this incredibly quickly because I want to get to questions unless you vote me down and tell me to stop on a slide, okay? All right, so here we go. This is the PIC stuff. Follow the instructions, pic.lync.com. Now, word of warning, this can take up to 25 to 30 days, all right? So don't leave this to the last minute. In fact, if you're even planning this, probably worthwhile getting started right now ahead of actually doing your configuration, just to get the ball rolling. All right. Next step, we're onto the Edge server, and we're doing the certificate generation. So the first step, and my eyes are failing. I can't see that screen.
Switch faces.
Here we go. So we're going to choose the external Edge certificate. We're going to prepare the request now, but send it later. We're going to store it, so we're going to need a file name here. So we give it a file name. We give it a friendly name, and we're going to choose 2K bit length. We're going to mark the certificate's private key as exportable. We hit next. It automatically picks up your SIP domain. So in this case, gosh, contoso.com. Who knew? It's going to give me a summary of what it's about to do. Here we go. I'm going to request the certificate. I can view the log above. It generates a file like this. I need to copy and paste everything from the word begin at the top there all the way to the line that says end new certificate request. Send that to my CA or my certificate authority. They send me back the certificate, which I then configure on the Edge server using the instructions on TechNet, and I'm up and running with my encryption. It's now time to set the policies. I'm going to enable communication with federated users. I'm going to enable communication with public users. I'm going to enable federation and public IM connectivity. Gosh, there's a little bit of redundancy here, isn't there? Enable partner domain discovery. Send archiving disclaimer to federated partners. So if you are archiving, when you start the chatting, they'll get the disclaimer in the chat. You can set these rules for both users, groups, or all users. Allow users to communicate only with people on their contact list who use the provider. So what you're doing here is you're saying, I hate to say this, but there are some people who use Skype that you may not want to necessarily communicate with. So your preference is going to be to say yes when someone sends you a contact request rather than just have that be automatic. Okay, so my recommendation is keep that somewhat locked down in this way by selecting this command. Otherwise, you could get some stuff that you're not really expecting. The final slide is actually sort of announcing, okay, that was the Lync server side. You're done. Those were the 3 steps. You're up and running. This file is available, obviously, for download, so you can use this as documentation. But obviously on TechNet, you've got the full description of how all this stuff works. This slide just shows you the admin center for Lync Online. As you can see, there is only one line that relates to setting up Lync Skype connectivity v2. Well, v1 here will be v2. You simply toggle this option, and it's then allowing Lync Skype connectivity. I will say there's a 24-hour lead time on doing this. So much better than 25 to 30 days, but still requires a little bit of thought. Think ahead. Make sure your account is using Lync Skype connectivity before people need to use it desperately for something urgent. Okay, that was the end of the configuration. We're into the concluding part of the presentation. That's a couple of slides. Then we'll open up for questions. I wanted to say that the Skype Silk codec stuff that I referred to earlier on may, in your opinion, have broken some of the things you were expecting. Just want to let you know we have been talking to partners about this change to Silk. They've already built Silk capability into their recording platforms, for example. So now those recording platforms, if you're doing recording for regulatory purposes, for example, you now have a list of vendors who have already stepped up and are implementing Silk into their offerings so that you can record those sessions in the same way that you record any link-to-link call. All right, so I'm just letting you know that when we release, those guys are going to be with us at the same time. You'll find some of those folks are here at the event. You can go and have a chat with them. So finally, this is our summary slide.
So, yeah, that's a summary slide. We showed you what was new about Skype, some of the cool things from Jimmy Kimmel Live to the TED video. We showed you some differentiators around mostly the meeting experience. Went into lots of detail on both the underlying technologies and sort of what you need to do to implement Skype. So we think the Lync Skype connectivity. So we think that leaving here, you should have all you need. Of course, these slides will be available to you after the show. And right now, I guess we'll open up for questions.
That's right. It does feel a bit like a show, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's true. Is this a show?
So 3 key things to remember. The headline news is video with Lync Skype connectivity v2, enterprise-level security mechanisms built into the product, and of course, best of breed audio with the Silk codec. We hope you've enjoyed this. We're going to open up for questions now. Show of hands. Did we answer everything? Go ahead. Thank you.
Because I have a question.
Yes, what's yours?
No, go ahead.
I may have just missed this, but usually a mediation server is involved with audio codec changes. Is Silk going to be on the Lync client, or does it still go through a mediation server?
Oh, great question. So actually no mediation required. And the way that's accomplished is we have put the capability into the Lync client to use Silk, and we've put the TLS, we've put the stun turn ICE capability into the Skype client. So we fixed it at the client level to avoid having anything sticking in the middle. And frankly, that was a question that was coming up all the time from financial services. They were asking us to assure them there was nothing sitting in the middle that was doing encryption, re-encryption, or whatever, or transcoding. And in this case, absolutely the case. There was nothing in the middle. It's peer-to-peer. All right, so hey, Derek, when's it all going to be available then?
We're aiming for summer or end of the year for most of the rest of the clients as well. Excellent question, Barry.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We do need to say, though, as you,
Oh, yeah.
we see people drifting out.
Evals. That's right.
Please do fill in those evals. It's important to us, important to the company to know whether the sessions are working or not. So we'd appreciate that. Give it a go. I'm sure there are more questions.
Well,
All
thanks
right.
for.
Did you enjoy it? All right, great. Thanks for attending. Have a great show.
Thanks a lot.